Hey, everybody, welcome to Team Doberman Bodybuilding. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to be having a interview with a registered licensed nutritionist and very smart lady, Jessica Barron. And if you like people that are straight shooters and cut through the BS, you'll like this interview. I definitely would like to have her back for another interview. So, hope you enjoy. Thanks.
Go.
There you go. All
Hi.
right. Hey. So yeah, I've been looking forward to this because really like your videos you've been putting out. They've it's kind of stuff I wanted to put out before because I've just seen a lot of this nonsense going around lately. And from a nutritionist point of view, I can't imagine how frustrating it would be for you. So I really appreciate that.
I
Um,
mean, luckily I've been doing this for so long that I'm not as emotional about it. I would get emotional.
mm,
I've been able to at least take a step back and not get emotional when people are being idiots.
mm, yeah, I definitely understand that. So before we start, like, tell me a little bit about yourself because I know a little bit. You have a master's in nutrition,
Yeah.
and you've also got some personal experience with diet and nutrition.
Yeah. So, I went to school. My undergrad was in communications from Boston. Like I was always interested in nutrition, but I never really knew anybody in dietetics growing up. So it wasn't like a thought to me. So I went to Boston University and learned how to drink and do drugs. I mean, let's be honest, right? Um, and then it took me almost 8 years after I graduated, and I had a dream to go back to school for nutrition.
Hmm.
So I lived in Cleveland. I still live in Cleveland. Case Western was the only school that had an accredited nutrition program, and I couldn't move because my husband was in law school at the time. So like it was case or bust.
Oh wow,
And
yeah,
so, yeah, so I got in, had to, take some prerequisites from Tri-C because I didn't have any, there was no crossover, and I didn't have much science as a communication major.
that's how they get you.
That's how you, right. So I went to Tri-C for like 2 years to get my prereqs, did all that, and then got accepted in '08.
Hmm.
Graduated in 12, did a fellowship at the CDC for like 3 years. And this whole while though, like my eating disorder started when I was like in the 8th grade. So I've been living and masking my ED all through college, all through dietetic school. I was praised for my size. And it really didn't come to like a full head until I had kids and I realized, all right, this is controlling me to a fault now. And
Hmm.
I'm taking it out of my kids. So I kind of redirected and then pivoted from a weight loss to intuitive eating.
Hmm.
Just I don't have any problem with weight loss, but there's enough weight loss people out there. You
Oh
know what
yeah,
I mean? Like I don't need to be another one talking about weight loss. So I kind of like how I can pivot and bring in like the mental side of things because that's really what it is very mental.
yeah, and it's funny because once you get control of that, what weight you're at or what body composition you have, it's almost easier to control those kinds of things when you're not overly obsessed with them in a way.
Yeah, there's something called obsessive passion, right? Of course, I want people to be healthy. Of course, I want people to eat well and exercise and get the sleep and manage their stress. But life happens, like, but there's something called obsessive passion. And that really brings out the negative part of, you're socially isolating yourself, you're going to sleep hungry, you're physically nauseous because you're not eating. So, there's a downside to it. And this world, as you know, is very disordered. The health and fitness world is really rife with disorder and they don't, you know, people justify their eating when they're deep in their eating disorder. If you don't feel the need to justify yourself, you're probably fine. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yes, and in the competitive arena, it's extremely common for people to take their 16 to 20 weeks to get into amazing shape. And
Mhm.
then for the next 2 months, they're eating out of control because they've weighed, they've measured, they've looked at every little macronutrient. And when it's over with, they're like, okay, I can enjoy myself. And they go off the deep end. And
Right.
at 50 years old, I'd done that. I'd done all that. And I had some clients that were kind of, hey, coach, you got to do it again. I'm like, I'm 50. I don't want to do that again. So they pressured me enough that I ended up doing it, and I ended up looking the best I've ever looked. And I did not really I looked at my protein and I kind of looked at macros, but it was more about finding foods that I enjoyed and
Mhm.
not having such a really it's hard to explain, but it wasn't a really harsh regimen. And I never was cranky. I never felt ill or weak or
Mhm.
it was very enjoyable. And I just remember in my 20s and 30s doing it, and I was an angry person. And
Angry.
yeah, and it's the same. And it's one of the things I have with coaching people is that I don't want to create these patterns that lead to these issues that you talk about.
Right. Right. And that's the thing with coaches and meal plans, it gets a little tricky because look, you want your client to have this physical transformation. I mean,
Mhm.
that's why they're going to you. But there has to be some check and balances, and a lot of clients aren't going to necessarily admit or realize that they might be going buck wild on the weekends, which is like, for example, this one woman sent me another coach's meal plan for this person who quit going to this guy. 5'9", she's 150 pounds, and he put her on, I think, 1,300 calorie a day,
Oh, jeez.
and then she's binging on the weekends. So it's like,
And where do you go from there?
right.
Yeah, I mean, you
So
can't cut.
you can't go any further down. And again, they don't want to come back to the coach and be like, well, I binged on the weekend, because then the coach makes it like they failed.
Mhm. Yes.
They're not doing it right. But again, there's like a small sect who gets very disordered. Thankfully, she recognized it and stopped going to him. But,
Yeah.
when most people look their best, they're usually at their worst mentally,
Mhm.
and I've heard that so many times. Well, just when I'm at my best, that's when I'm at my worst.
Mhm.
And, it's hard to step out of that ego and be like, okay, I look great, but I'm really, here's my cuss word, fucking up myself and the people around me for an image because you're embarrassed if you were to gain weight.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find it difficult when you work with somebody to get them out of that mindset of such a well, for instance, a lot of times when I coach with a female that hasn't competed before, but she's saying she wants to, but she's not really close to that, and she's been dieting really hard for a long time, but I see that she needs more muscle or whatever. I usually put them on a higher calorie diet than they're expecting,
Yeah.
and they kinda wanna fight that, and I'm
Right.
like, "No, we need to get you healthy first," and, then
And then we
and
can cut.
and yeah,
Right.
and then they end up getting into a contest prep where they're like, "I can't believe I'm eating this much food,"
Right.
and it's because 'cause we're doing it the right way, we're not
Right.
starving them.
Right. I mean, the 90s fucked us up. The Biggest Loser fucked us up.
Oh god, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we've been inundated with eat less, move more to a fault. And we have been driving this 1,200, 1,300 calorie rhetoric to people, and it's not working.
Mhm,
You know, like, it's not working, people. It's backfiring. And there's a reason it's not enough food to sustain somebody. Um, but again, there's shame involved, and a lot of people don't want to admit that they're not following a trainer's plan,
mhm,
right? Because it's like disappointing your mom or dad.
yeah,
Yeah. So more food, good. And it's a very scary thing for women and some men, but unfortunately more women, just because of the media and whatnot. There's just like this false expectation of what like a body should look like, a healthy body,
oh yeah,
you know. Yeah, it is hard. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, when my clients come to me, they know I don't do weight loss.
Mhm.
they know I'm not against weight loss. Like, I've had clients who have lost weight being with me, but that's
Mhm.
because they have started to do the habits. They're not binging
Yeah.
and purging, doing all that. I've had some who've gained and some who've net, but they're healthy. My one girl was just a prime example of you can't look at somebody's size and tell if they're healthy or not. She's overweight, you know,
Mhm.
um, but she was able to. She was in a pre-diet. She was pre-diabetic when we
Mhm.
met. Now she's totally in the green because of her changing how she was eating. She didn't lose any weight though. So it goes to show, if even if somebody looks big, it does not necessarily mean that they're unhealthy. And it's hard. I used to be stuck in that
Mhm.
superficial mindset. Well, if somebody's fat or overweight, they have to be unhealthy. And that's not always the case. The body just presents differently on different people.
Oh, yeah. There's
You know?
just like, I have people that react to, like, a higher volume of training, and some people do better with less sets, and, we're individuals, and,
Uh-huh.
you know, um, some people do better with higher carbohydrate diets, and I wouldn't go as low as keto, but, like, I would say a lot of people some people do better with lower carbs,
Right.
and some of it's, as you talk about all the time, it's adherence too, like, if something works for somebody, they're gonna adhere to it and they're gonna stay consistent with it, and
Right.
that's really how these habits are formed, is consistency.
Right. But consistency is very boring.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very boring, and I do say this sometimes, boring consistency. Like, you have to do the same thing every day, and people just are so instant, want something done so fast. And I don't know if you've seen the video of like this like overweight chunky boy who like does sit-ups and then he looks at his belly to see if he has a six pack. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
People want things, and to get to like your level of fitness, that takes years of consistent and not cherry picking. Oh, well, this person's doing this diet and cutting out this food. And, people are constantly cherry picking out all these things instead of really just starting at the basics. But the basics don't sell, the basics are boring.
Yeah, and
No.
that's that's one of the things I was gonna touch on today too, is that I you know, I tell people the things I eat when I do a contest prep, and they're like, "Oh, you can't do that." Like, I drink a lot of diet soda. That's
Right?
gonna kill you. That's gonna kill you. It's gonna cause cancer." And I'm like, "Did you ever actually read the study on aspartame? Do
Right.
you know how much safety has been
Yeah.
pulled out of the real studies?" And they, and I was fortunate enough that I had a doctor that put me under his wing and taught me how to read some of these studies, because
Yeah.
the news will take one of these studies and pull a little excerpt out of it, and then everything's going to kill you.
Everything's
And
going to kill you. And those studies are often done on rats,
yeah, and that's
where
the
they give them a dose that is so above what even a human would ingest in a day. And then that's what they pay. So the thing with the media is they do not have any training in research. And so they often, like you just said, they will look at, something that looks scary, cherry pick it, and then that becomes the news. And people take that as, well, if the news is saying it, it must be true, because they're not going to give us something that's untrue. I mean, what they're spouting has some level of truth, but it doesn't apply to humans.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's when honestly that their job is not necessarily to inform people; it's to build an advertising base and
Yeah.
to make money. And so if it's just like at the beginning of the news, they'll say, "Don't eat this one thing because it will kill you.
Right.
We'll tell you later at 11." And it's like,
Exactly.
so like,
Yeah.
all right, probably
Later.
eating something that's going to kill me, but I have to wait till 11 to find out if I'm going to die or not.
Right. Right.
And
There's just a lot of mistrust right now, with when people are saying the government's trying to kill us, they don't care about us, da da da. And people are just trying to make money. And I think people get food companies and like health professionals intertwined,
mm,
because health professionals, we don't really make that much money. You know what I mean? Like, Big pharma's not paying us, big food's not paying us. They have their own marketing department. I mean, most people who are in the health industry, not doctors, but like trainers, dietitians, nurses, we're not making all that much money. But the government does have a set of dietary guidelines. And wouldn't you know, nobody's following them. So you can't blame the government for trying to keep people sick. Like they're
Yeah.
not following the recommendations because the recommendations are boring and it takes a consistency of those recommendations. But
Yeah.
then they want to turn around and blame. There's no conspiracy to try to make people unhealthy. That's that's not really a thing,
I,
you
I
know?
think, I think the only conspiracy, it's not to keep people unhealthy. It's that, okay, if I'm a food company and I want to make money, I'm going to make things that are hyper palatable because you're going to want more of it. And
Well, so I'm going to cut you off with that because a lot of people have this. The thing with hyperpalatable foods is that they digest quickly.
yes,
So it's, I hear when people are like, it's hyperpalatable, so people feel addicted to it,
oh
but they
yeah,
digest
no,
quickly. And that is what's causing you to want more. It's not inherently the food itself, but if that food was satiating and stayed
hmm
in your stomach longer, I don't think people would have that sort of reaction to it. Do you know what I mean? But
yes,
it's
exactly.
it has the properties that taste good, but we want our food to taste good. But yeah, there is a point to make things hyper palatable and make somebody maybe want to crave it. But again, I know one of your things was cravings versus hunger.
hmm
Cravings are often coming from people not stabilizing their blood sugar, waiting too long to eat,
hmm
not planning properly, like leaving the house and not taking something with you in anticipation, then they want to go into McDonald's because they get so hungry, they're not going to have time to cook a meal,
Yeah,
right? So cravings really are either, there's you can just have a craving and still have, had a balanced meal, but really most of my clients, if not all, have now understood, oh, okay, the reason I started craving that cupcake was because I went too long without eating a meal.
yeah,
And people
yeah,
are scared to eat because food has calories. And I know you've heard me say this so many times. The longer you put off eating, you're just delaying the inevitable and you're going to go overboard
exactly.
because you catch up calories. If you know, your body needs food consistently throughout the day. And if
hmm
you don't feed it, it's going to go for the thing that's going to digest quickly that happens to be those hyperpalatable foods.
Yeah,
Nobody wants an apple if they're very hungry. They want
hmm
chips, they want a cookie, they want sugar. They need and the brain knows it's gonna digest quicker than if you were to make a salad.
yeah. But I,
Yeah.
I think my only point is just that we try to make things so complicated, like there's some vast conspiracy when really it's just basic. This is something people would want, we're going to make it. And,
Right.
it's up to us to kind of discern on, okay, I'm allowed to have a treat. I'm allowed to
Yeah.
have this. Um, you know, okay, I'll have a few Oreos. Do I need the whole sleeve? and,
Right.
um, but
The sleeve comes from a couple different things. It's, again, waiting too damn long to eat,
yes.
or it's setting up food rules. You did something and you broke your food rule, and so then it turns into a "fuck it."
hmm
"Fuck it. I'll just start over again on Monday. I'm just gonna eat the whole just get it out of the house. I'm just gonna eat them all."
Oh, I've been there. Yeah.
Right? Get it out so that way I can be good tomorrow.
hmm
And how many people start over on a Monday over and over and over again?
hmm
And that's contributing to the weight gain. It's not
Yes.
necessarily not the food itself, it's the behaviors leading up to
Well, and we both heard it before that I was good all week. I ate exactly what I was supposed to eat. They leave out that one day where they just went over their numbers, and they don't realize that one day counters out acts the other six.
it does because if you really think about like calories, there's a very small window.
Yeah.
It's not a lot. You can start gaining weight very easily with an extra 100 calories. So if somebody has a blowout every fucking weekend, they're never gonna and they're just gonna be spinning their tail, and then they go back and say, "I don't," and then they say, "Fuck it." you know,
Yeah.
when it should be consistency, up and down, and learning just to not say fuck it and be like, okay, all right, and not have that mentality,
Yeah.
you know. And I think people also have a hard time throwing stuff away. Like we're
Yeah.
still in that, like, leftover generation of like clean the plate,
Yeah.
and they're
Oh,
skilled,
yeah.
right? They're
Oh,
skilled
yeah.
about throwing food out.
There's starving kids in China when I was a kid and heard
Yeah,
about it every time.
yeah.
So,
My one client's in her 60s. She got the Vietnam. She got Vietnam.
mhm,
And so she has this, so she doesn't even like to buy food. Just trying to get this client to go to the store and buy food has been a struggle because she's so afraid that if she doesn't eat it, like the overwhelming guilt of throwing it out is
mm,
still impacting her, right? So
yeah.
she's
Wow.
not eating. Yeah. I mean, it's really layered. So again, it's not about the food, it's what we've been taught,
Mhm.
you know, and so really if you allow yourself to eat until you're full and be okay with throwing even a piece away. But again, there's that fuck it. Well, there's one more bite. You could be stuffed, but you don't want to waste that one bite. And so
Yeah.
people really do need to get used to throwing their food out. I know people are going, you're throwing your food waste. Yeah, because it's going to waste here or it's going to go waste in the garbage. What does it matter?
Mhm. Yeah, one thing that I try to do is I don't, um, call foods bad or good, but
Mhm.
I do try to encourage foods that have a high satiating factor,
Yeah,
like potatoes.
nutrient
The
dense foods.
Yeah, potatoes are extremely satiating. It's hard to eat a
Oh,
lot of potatoes,
yeah,
and you can make them so many ways that are delicious,
yeah.
and then I come across clients that are like, "Well, I can't put salt on that." Like, "Yeah, yeah, you can."
Sure
That
you can because
you
it
know?
tastes good.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
you know, also, if somebody is very athletic, if they are working out a lot, if they are drinking a lot of water, you need a little bit more salt than the average person.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Right.
but yeah, that's the big thing I see is that even if I get people to eat right, it won't last if they don't enjoy what they're eating,
Mhm.
and season your food. Make it
That is
enjoyable.
right, right, right. I don't know what the fear is about, like, seasoning, but again, you have people talking about all the crap in seasonings and all the fear mongering.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you have
Yeah.
to make your food taste good. That means sauces that have sodium in it, but you have to kind of step back and be like, okay, well, this meal is going to provide protein, and people who are more satiated tend to again not be tempted to overeat. There's people who will eat something that they didn't want. They still feel full, but there's something still missing, and that's because
Mhm.
they didn't really, and so they wind up overeating in search of the one thing that they're avoiding.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, it's just textbook, and it's been decade after decade of people doing the same shit, right?
Yeah, um, a lot I I don't wanna say that a lot of things that lead to that would help people reach their goals are really common sense things, but they
Yeah.
really are. And then you've got the people that you and I get frustrated at that try to make things overly complicated and scare them. And
Right.
they get more views, but
Yeah.
they're not educating people correctly.
No, it's fear. I mean, fear sells. Look at scary movies, like
Hmm.
people people thrive on something that doesn't sound familiar because again, the boring stuff that we push has been around for so long, nobody's following it. So everyone assumes that that can't be the way.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of these influencers are genetically blessed, have had surgery. Their job is to be in the gym.
Hmm.
Most people don't have all of those luxuries. They
Hmm.
have kids, they have jobs, they might work third shift, they might be single parents, and you have to take all of that into account. And unfortunately, social media, I saw a funny thing where somebody was like, this is kind of like when, remember in school you had like the really smart kids in a different class and the dumb kids in a different class, and on
Hmm.
social media we're all here mixed together.
Yeah.
Like, so people, again, the people are going to think that the person who looks good is
Yes.
going to get them to look the same if they follow what they're doing. And again, back to this very disordered pattern of a lot of fitness and dietitians in the wellness industry. It's so disordered, we don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. So again, you cannot judge somebody's body as the gold standard for knowledge.
Yeah. I think my red flag is when I hear them say the word chemical. Because, like, do you know what a chemical is? You know,
Right,
and I've had people that are like just they're just robot
they can't.
followers. They're
Right,
robot followers of these people, and they're like, "But the chemicals." And I go, "Well, what's a chemical?" And they can't give me a definition for a chemical. And I
right.
mean, it's like almost anything's a chemical, and they don't understand
Right.
that.
Well,
So
it's funny because like the 90s used to call things like fatty and greasy, and now it's like toxic and poison.
yes, yeah,
And again, everything is toxic at inappropriate levels,
yep.
So
Poison is in
again,
the dose.
say it again,
Poison is in the dose.
in the dose. But when you have these media and these influencers with their fancy videos
Hmm.
leaving out some of that information, it's very easy to fall for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And look, when you're deep in some sort of eating disorder, it's impossible to, it's like hitting rock bottom if you're an alcoholic. You cannot convince somebody who is in that mindset that what they're doing is actually not healthy.
yeah,
Yeah, like there is that fine line like we just talked about a few minutes ago about obsessive passion. We want people to be healthy, but at what cost?
yeah.
You know.
One last thing, we're gonna have to wrap up.
Sure.
That went by quick.
I know.
Um,
I
but
talk a lot.
oh, me too. It's a problem. Um,
We can always
so
do a part two if you want.
so now here's a reverse problem, and honestly, I always gained weight pretty easily, so I never really thought about it until I tried to gain weight, and I actually found gaining weight is almost more difficult when you're trying to do it, and
Okay.
when you're trying to do it without gaining fat. For
Yeah.
sure, yes, and I mean, is there anything that you've ever come across where somebody's been malnourished or they needed to gain weight where you had to get them in the mindset to do that and do it correctly?
Yeah. 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 But again, for what the people I'm seeing, I think are different than the people you're seeing. The people I'm seeing, I want them to eat ice cream. Like I, um, I just started with a new girl who is emaciated. And I do want to say, I do not see clients unless they also see a therapist. They have to work in tandem
Mhm,
because I'm not a therapist. And so I can't treat, a lot of these are very mentally ill people. Um, and I said, okay, what are your favorite snacks from childhood? Macaroni and cheese, chips and dip.
mhm,
Yes, a dietitian told her to go get those foods because she
mhm.
needs calories. She needs the calories. Once we get her to an appropriate weight, then we can start pivoting to more balanced meals. But the name of the game, if you're underweight, is calories. I don't care where they're coming from.
It's funny you say that. I've done the same thing because
Yeah.
I've had people where there's a kid he's 190 pounds and he cannot gain weight. And
Mhm.
we're getting to the point where he had to eat like 5,000 calories a day. And he's a very active
Yeah.
guy. And at that point, you can't give them potatoes and a ton of vegetables because that's going to make them more sick than
Right.
if they ate healthy, or if they
Right.
ate
Right.
the other foods.
I
Um,
hear you.
in fact, I know somebody who was a pro bodybuilder and he refused to eat anything but clean foods, and he didn't know he had a genetic predisposition to oh gosh, the stomach disorder.
Celiac?
No, not celiac, but anyhow, he ended up in the hospital and almost died because of his intestines
He got into
flaring.
so much fiber. Like, was he just
I think it was, but um, so I forget the name of the disease, but yeah, it almost killed him. So yeah, you got to use the
clean is not, yeah, I mean, clean is just such a white bread born bullshit to try to make them feel better.
yeah. Well,
There's
hey,
there is
I think
nothing
it's going to
clean
cut
to it.
us off here. So darn.
Okay.
But I'm going to get some information from you when we get offline and put it in the links and everything. So if people need to get a hold of you or see your videos,
Okay.
they'll be able to find you. All right.
Great. Thank
Hey,
you.
thanks, Jessica. We'll see you. Bye.